Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to all of you who are here with us in the room. Shabbat Shalom to everyone who is joining us online. It is so good to be able to welcome Shabbat with you, to be able to welcome Shabbat with Cantor Simmons and our house band, to be able to bring in the joyful sound of Shabbat. What a blessing. It is also a blessing to get to celebrate the Shabbat with Ryan Brooks and his family, as he will become a bar mitzvah tomorrow morning, and you'll be hearing more from him later this evening as well. And mostly to be together. I hope that you have wished Shabbat Shalom to someone sitting near you. If you are online, I hope you've put in the chat Shabbat Shalom. If you clicked a little gear next to the submit button on our website, you can change your name, and then we'll know who is with us this Shabbat. We are so blessed to be together. And for those of you who are joining us here in the room, we want this to be a joyful and prayerful evening. We hope that you will pray enthusiastically with your words. We hope that you will clap along and move along with us. We hope that you will sing inside your hearts. We know that singing is one of the ways that spreads the most particles, so we're going to ask that you not sing this evening, but we hope that you will continue to pray with us. And we are going to continue our work of welcoming Shabbat by inviting up Ryan and his family to lead us in the lighting of the Shabbat candles, which begins on page 3 in your prayer books, page 3.
If you want to take off your masks.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us.
As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled lights, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle lights.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, and you all may be seated and put your masks back on. We welcome Shabbat with psalms. This psalm can be found on page 23. These words are kind of buried in the middle, and they mean this: above the voices of the many waters, more majestic than the breakers of the sea, is Adonai, majestic on high. continue welcoming Shabbat on page 20 with Lecha Dodi. Shamar v'zachor v'divorecha entrance as we welcome in the Shabbat bride. And when you hear the words Lecha Dodi, that is your cue to turn back around. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha u'betola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala.
We continue our prayer on page 28 with our call to worship, Baruch Hu. Page 28, we remain standing.
Amen. prayer for the evening, The Night is Waiting. The light is fading, the night is waiting for you and me. Let's rearrange the stars. The mystery lies in the color of the skies when the words are on your lips that speak the evening into being. Ba 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 bum. Ba 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 bum. Ba 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 bum. The sun's gone missing. The moon is whispering my name, but I have to listen close. The arc of its ascension commands my full attention. The sky provides a backdrop of purple and blues. Ba 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 bum. Ba 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 bum. Ba 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 bum. The light is fading, the night is waiting for you and me. Let's rearrange the stars. Baruch atah Adonai, Amari Aravi.
We pray together in the middle of page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us, and the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. We continue with Ve'ahavta, page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam ve'shivtecha beveitecha uvlechtecha v'aderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam lehot al yadecha ve'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kiroshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti atchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. These words on page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught. Before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternal Egypt. a promised land, and the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together, singing
For our Hashkivenu this evening, our prayer for God's protection during the nighttime, a poem not found in your book by Philip Booth called Hope. Old Spirit, in and beyond me, keep and extend me. Amid strangers, friends, great trees and big seas breaking, let love move me. Let me hear the whole music, see clear, reach deep. Open me to find due words, that I may shape them into plowshares of my own making. After such luck, however late, give me to give to the oldest dance, then to good sleep, and if it happens, glad waking. Baruch atah Adonai haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue now with a blessing for Shabbat Yismechu in the middle of page 44.
Yismechu במלכותך, שומרי שבת. מקדשי שבי, כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך, ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. בקורי עונג, ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, שבת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, שבת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. בקורי עונג, ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת. ישבעו במלכותך, שומרי שבת.
We continue with the Amidah, the central part of our worship, which begins on page 46, and we invite up Ryan Brooks to lead us in those prayers. We invite you to rise in body or in spirit, page 46.
Adonai, sefatar tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hamnorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'socher Chasdei Avot v'imahot, U'mivigula livnei b'neihem, Leman Shemo be'ava. Melech Ozer Mushia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaei ha'kol atah Rav le'Oshia, Morid ha'tal, Mechakel chaim bechesed, Mechaei ha'kol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Micha mocha bal gevurot, Umido melach, Melech mamiv, Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman atah lechayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh mishcha kadosh, ukdoshim b'chol yom yohalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Thank you, Ryan. Yasher Koach. You may be seated, as may everyone else. In the middle of the Amidah comes a blessing called the Modim prayer, which is all about gratitude. Tonight, as our Modim, another poem. This one is enjoyably called The Big Heart Poem by Anne Sexton, and it goes like this. Big heart, wide as a watermelon, but wise as birth. There is so much abundance in the people I have. Max, Lois, Joe, Louise, Joan, Marie, Dawn, Arlene, Father Dune, and all in their short lives give to me repeatedly, in the way the sea places its many fingers on the shore again and again. And they know me, and they help me unravel. They listen with ears made of conch shells. They speak back with the wine of the best region. They are my staff. They comfort me. They hear how the artery of my soul has been severed, and soul is spurting out on them, bleeding on them, messing up their clothes, dirtying their shoes. And God is filling me through their at times of doubt, as hollow as the Grand Canyon. Still, God is filling me. God is giving me the thoughts of dogs, the spiders in its intricate web, the sun in all its amazement, and a slain ram that is the glory, the mystery of great cost, and my heart, which is very big, and I promise it is very large, a monster of sorts, takes it all in. All in comes the fury of love. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. We take a moment now to pray for peace with the words of Shalom Rav on page 60.
Shalom Rab, Ale Yisrael, Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rab, Ale Yisrael, Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. 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 Shalom Rab, Ale Yisrael, Amcha, Tasim Leolam. אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. We take a moment for silent prayer. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
We turn our prayers now to those who are in need of healing, those who are seeking strength and seeking wholeness. There are people in our lives whose pains we see and know about, and those who we interact with where we have no idea. We think about people who are struggling with the chronic pains and chronic illnesses that inflict them over long periods of time. We think about those who are struggling with addiction, those who are in recovery, those who are grieving and struggling and finding their way. And for all of them, we offer words of healing and hope. In our community, we are thinking tonight of Sonia Benjamin and Marcia Block, Bradley Borden, Melba Berman, Miles Cohn, Edward Feldman, James Hess, Jerry Hooks, Richard Jackson, Sarah James, Mike Karchmer, Lawrence Levy, Bree Pugh, Arthur Raymond Ribbon, Edward Simmons, Mirvat Ted Rose, Marcia Tushita, Tarina Underwood, Roger Williams, Gelka Nechama Bat Leba Chaya, and Leah Fruma, as well as all who are suffering with physical illness, emotional distress and pain, and those battling COVID-19. We offer this prayer for healing, Misha Berach, page 253.
Avotenu Mekor habracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Yisheberach imoteinu, mekor habracha lavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
A few brief announcements for this Shabbat. The first is on Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. is Cantor Simmons' annual concert. This one is entitled The Man Upstairs ? Questioning God Through Music. I'm told the question mark is a spoken part of the title.
You need to emphasize that.
Yes. Okay. The Man Upstairs ? I volunteered to be the director of this thing, which mostly just meant I got to see some parts of it before you all get to see it, and I just have to tell you, it is going to be absolutely incredible. And I'm not biased, but really, you should tune in Tuesday night at 7. It's going to be a beautiful evening, and we hope that you will join us online for that. And you wanted to share something happening the next day.
I have an announcement. So we have a new running club, the Emmanuel Running Club, kicking off this coming Wednesday at 7:45. So you can enjoy the concert Tuesday night and then join together on Wednesday morning for a little run or a walk. We're going to meet in the west parking lot for a run around the Rice Loop. All paces and levels of experience are welcome. So we hope you'll join us.
Less invigorating in your body, but still very invigorating for our congregation. On Sunday, April 18th at 4 p.m. is our congregation's annual meeting. This is open to all of our members, and we do want to encourage everyone to register and be a part of that so we can do the important work of the synagogue. Again, April 18th at 4. You can register online, or you can call the synagogue office. And finally, I do want to remind you that Emmanuel has now entered phase 4 of our reopening plan, which expands the amount of allowed worshipers in the pew and continues to build the momentum of our in-person programming. If you're interested in attending Shabbat worship here in the Barish Sanctuary on Friday nights, pre-registration is still required through our website with a deadline of the Thursday night prior to Shabbat. As a reminder, all of our Shabbat worship and most of our experiences will continue to be live streamed through all the ways that you have been watching them so far during the pandemic. For those in the Barish Sanctuary, at the conclusion of the service, I'm going to ask that you remain in your seats so that we can dismiss you in a way that ensures social distancing. And we'll ask that you leave your prayer books. We'll ask that you take your prayer books to the back of the sanctuary and put them back on the cart as you exit. But I'll give you more instructions about that a little later. I have to stop looking at Twitter. It's really not healthy for my blood pressure. The algorithm seems surgically designed to serve up something that will make me go, "He said what?" Yesterday, it was a quote from the Texas House Speaker, Dade Phelan, who was speaking about the omnibus election bill, which has passed the Senate and which is moving its way through the House. Phelan challenged anyone to point anywhere in his bill where it suppresses votes. Now, setting aside that I could point to numerous places in the bill where it would lead to suppression of voters, and scores of people have already done that, and setting aside that Emmanuel is partnered with the Religious Action Center of Texas and civil rights groups across the state to defeat these dangerous bills, what struck me in that quote was just how differently he and I are viewing this conversation. It's like we are in two alternate realities. What seems so plainly to me as one thing, to him seems so plainly another. And the idea that this divide could ever be bridged seemed, at that moment that I read that tweet, impossible. It's not news to tell you that political partisanship is at a high, that neighbors and community members are moving farther and farther from each other politically as they dig deeper and deeper into their own realities. And it's not just that we believe different things, it's that we can't stand each other. And it's not always been this way. According to one study 40 years ago, when asked to rate how favorable and warm their opinion was of each party, average Democrats and Republicans said they felt okay-ish about the other party. But for 4 decades now, partisans have increasingly turned against each other in an escalating cycle of dislike and distrust. Views of the other party are currently at an all-time low. Political scientists call this negative partisanship, a party affiliation that is based, at least in part, more on disliking the other party than on a robust shared set of ideals in your own camp. The events of January 6th have reminded us that negative partisanship has reached dangerous levels. But on the subtler level, as we retreat into our political corners, and as our disdain for each other grows, our ability to talk to each other, to solve problems and compromise diminishes. How can we find common ground when everything you stand for threatens everything I stand for? How can we sit down at a table with people we hate? We are in this period between Passover and Shavuot called the Omer. The Torah commands that from the second day of Passover, you shall count off 7 complete weeks. Shavuot, the celebration of receiving the Torah at Mount Sinai, is called the Feast of Weeks. Every day for these 7 weeks we count. There is a special blessing that we recite, which we will do together tonight in just a few minutes. It's a strange tradition. Why do we count off these 49 days in the spring? Why do we not count between other holidays? What is the benefit of counting? One might think that this would be a joyous season. We move from the redemption of Passover to the celebration of the revelation at Sinai. What could be more joyous than that? But strangely, we treat the Omer with a certain solemnity, unlike the festive nature of both holidays which bookended. To explain this seriousness, the rabbis connect the period to a story of Rabbi Akiva, a scholar who lived in the 1st and 2nd century after the temple had been destroyed. Rabbi Akiva, we're told, had 12,000 pairs of disciples that all died tragically in the period between Passover and Shavuot. And why did they die? The Talmud relates that they died because they failed to treat each other with respect. Something broke down in these pairs, these learning partners, a relationship that is supposed to be based in love and deep commitment and respect. And because of this, God sent a plague that killed them all. Now, a story about a plague that killed 24,000 rabbinical students is almost certainly hyperbole. But it speaks to the danger that comes when people who are supposed to live together in community lose that ability to respect each other. The stakes are high. And that memory of the world-upending loss of respect that is supposed to inform how we count our way through this season. The story also calls to mind something that happens in this week's Parsha, Shmini. On the day of the dedication of the Mishkan, the center of Israelite worship in the wilderness, and the day that Aaron and his sons were anointed priests, tragedy struck. 2 of those sons, Nadav and Avihu, go into the Mishkan uninvited, and they offer a sacrifice of incense which had not been commanded. God is angered by their offering and sends a fire which consumes them. A day of happiness, the dedication of the Mishkan is now tinged with sadness and loss. But what is not entirely clear in the story is what Nadav and Avihu did that was so wrong and offensive to God. The work they were supposed to engage in was holy work, in Hebrew, kadosh. Instead, the fire they offer is eish zara, a strange fire. To understand what was so unwelcome, we need to understand something of what the Torah means by kadosh. Holiness in Jewish thought is something reserved for particular moments and places. There is holiness in time, in the seventh day of Shabbat, the seventh month of the year, which is the High Holy Days, the seventh year of a sabbatical, the seventh sabbatical, the Jubilee. And there are holy places, like the temple in Jerusalem, and before that, the Mishkan. But these times and places are not inherently holy. They are holy because of what happens there. According to the Kabbalists, when God set out to create the world, God had a problem. God was everywhere and everything, and in order for there to be room for creation, God had to contract God's self. The Kabbalists call this act tzimtzum. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs points out that this is one of the ways in which we can understand human creativity and free will. God made space for us in the universe so that we could have choice and our own ideals about the future that we wish to create. God does not remove God's self from the world completely and abandon us to our own devices, but God makes space for us to find our own way. As Rabbi Sachs explains, God in the Torah is like a parent who knows he must hold back, let go, refrain from intervening if his children are to become responsible and mature. I recently had minor surgery, and the next day my 3.5-year-old daughter barely noticed that I was hurting, because children are self-involved. They do not comprehend the complexity of their parents' lives. As they grow, children slowly start to notice their parents when they learn to set aside their own need. And the same is true of God. We can only encounter God when we do as God did, when we do tzimtzum. When we sublimate ourselves, get our egos out of the way, we can encounter something of the divine. That is what those holy places and times are about, spaces and moments where we can humble ourselves enough to experience the infinite. It's not that God doesn't value human will or creativity. God loves and celebrates them, but in moments of holy encounter, they are a hindrance, not a help. This is what Nadav and Avihu did wrong. As Rabbi Sachs contends, had they used their own initiative to fight evil and injustice, they would have been heroes. But instead, they wanted to assert themselves in the presence of God, to take up all the space and leave none for the divine. And that simply could not work. The story of Nadav and Avihu and the story of Akiva's students are both about people who are unable to engage in this act of self-limitation. Nadav and Avihu do not make space for God in the holiest place in the world, and so they are destroyed. Similarly, the study partners cannot make space for each other. They think they know best, and they lose all respect for the differing ideas of their partners. And in that way, the sacred act of learning is fundamentally broken. You cannot learn with someone who you do not respect, and so the whole system tragically crumbles. That same hubris can damage our relationship with God and can also damage our relationships with other people. When there is only room for us, when we cannot open ourselves up to the other, we risk destruction. But this is the power of approaching the sacred in Judaism, the opportunity to practice this sacred skill of sublimation, to learn to do tzimtzum and check our hubris with some humility. Sachs describes the holy as the point at which the I am is silent in the overwhelming presence of the there is. This is the power of Shabbat. We set aside a day every week, not because God cares that we celebrate the anniversary of creation being finished, but because we need to practice putting our focus on something beyond just what we can create with our hands. One day in 7, we are supposed to devote ourselves to recognizing the world outside of ourselves. And now, in this period of the Omer, we have a unique opportunity to engage with that kind of thinking. Why do we need to count the 49 days between Passover and Shavuot, these 7 sevens? It's not because God does not know what day it is. It's not even because we don't know what day it is. It is because we need to practice doing something that is not all about us, that is not about our ideas or our constructive criticisms or even our choice. It is just about spending 49 consecutive days engaging in a ritual of humility in the hopes that it will teach us something about how to move through this world. We are at what I would argue is a crisis point in our country. If we keep moving further and further away from each other, we risk being like Akiva's students, who lost respect and destroyed each other. And there have been a growing number of projects in the last few years that are about bringing together people of disparate beliefs and experiences, and I think they're admirable. But I also worry that sometimes they forget the internal work we need to do to be able to show up in those spaces. If we enter into a conversation thinking we have all the answers, thinking we are 100% right, we leave no room for the other. To find common ground, the first step is tzimtzum, the spiritual practice of lessening ourselves to make room for the other. That is difficult, heart-wrenching work, and it requires regular practice, the kind of practice Shabbat and the Omer present to us. And I know it's scary to do this work when you fear the people on the other side will not do the same. I don't know how we teach this message across America. I don't know how we encourage all our neighbors to count their own Omers, to practice the humility that is necessary to live in diverse community. But I do know that I need the practice. And I know that I don't get the practice from reading Twitter. I get the practice when I turn my attention from the finite to the infinite, from creation to the creator, from the I to the us. There are 36 days left in the Omer. May these days of counting and consciousness be a lesson in lessening ourselves. May they help us to quiet our egos so that we might, on occasion, hear the view of others not like our own. May these days of enumeration open our minds and our hearts so that we and our neighbors may work for a brighter future. So now, let us count the Omer.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer.
Hayom shlosha asar yom, shehem shvua echad, Vishisha Yamim LaOmer. Today is the 13th day, making 1 week and 6 days of the Omer. We continue now in our service with Aleinu, which is found in the middle of page 282. I invite you please to rise as the ark is open.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלאכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Page 287. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום
Please be seated. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, life and death. We take a few moments now for silent memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. Our hearts go out in sympathy to the families of Jeffrey Mark and Sybil Velasco, who were laid to rest in recent days. We also recall the art sites, the anniversaries of the deaths of Irving Alexander, Saul L. Alpert, Molly Apsaloff, Louis Asheroff, Rose K. Bendix, Nellie Levy Berg, Lottie Burke, Sam Bernstein, Henry Hank Bickert, Sam R. Bishkin, Ruth Betensky, Rita Mallet Blasser, Pearl Boslow, Thelma Caro Bram, Martha Levy Breyer, Harvey B. Brenner, Irving Boomer, Max Bundman, Goldie Weissman Cash, Charles Cohen, Cecily Daly, Charlotte Davis, Rodrigo Delano, Samuel Ellis Dunham IV, Ethan Edloff, David Ernstein, Ben Farkas, Hannah Farkas, Nancy Zellinger Finger, Lionel Fink, Poppy Fink, Herman Fishbein, Louis Franklin, Daniel Frosch, Alan Garber, Saul Gerson, Abram Ginsberg, Frida Goldfaden, Seymour Cy Goldgen, Alfred Goodman, Samuel Charles Greenberg, Milton Greenberg, Joseph Gruen, Sophia Hassan, Percy Jacobson, Theodore Joseph, Jenny Kaplan, Lenny Charles Katz, Corinne Cutler Kaufman, Esther Leah Kay, Sarah Breyer Klein, Ralph B. Klein, Rhoda Fenberg Kraus, Rose Kroll, Mary S. Kuntz, Harry M. Cooper, Benjamin Lassoff, Norman Lebron, Jean Leonard, Seal Littman, Douglas G. Loeb, Philip G. Lusky, Stanley Margolis, Shirley Klein Markey, Louis Marks, Fran Michaels, Hilda R. Mintz, Alvin Harold Morwitz, Ann Nadel, Louis A. Nagel, Helen Nemiroff, Stephanie Odell, Jacob Pykoff, Helen Pasternak, Raphael Phillips, Solomon J. Plotkin, Matthew Reichland, Ruth Reef, Ben Ribnick, David Richmond, Minna Robbins, Louis Rosenberg, Phyllis Ravel Rosenblum, Alfred Rosenthal, Stanton Ruby, Jennifer Marissa Ruggeri, Jerry Schenberg, Hyman Schlossberg, Paul Siegel, Herman Schultz, Sylvia Silverman, Nathan Silverstein, Bessie Seltzer Sklar, Marcia Goldenberg Sloan, Janet Stein, Stephen Stryker, Thelma Schukart, Maurice Jeff Tritter, Ruben Ute, George Wagman, Bernard I. Wise, Moses Samuel Yellen, Sonia Zeisman. We join together in these words of memory, Kadisha Tome, page 294. Please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrachu te ve'al chute, b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'vizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam omea maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithale v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'ne'emata. Damiram be'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael V'imru. Amen.
Ose shalom bimromav, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen. You may be seated. We now invite Ryan and his family to return to the bima to lead us in Kiddush and Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kosho be'ava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit Ki hu yom techila lemekrae kodesh, zecher letziyat Mitzrayim. Kivanu bacharta, veltanu kidasha, mikol ha'amim. V'shabbat kodecha, ve'ava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-shabbat.
L'chaim. Now the motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem ein haaretz. Amen.
Have some challah, and as we sing, you all may be seated when you're ready. And we close tonight with these words of Psalm 93 that we heard earlier, the voices of the many waters. Mikolot ma'im rabim, adirim mishperei yam. Mikolot ma'im rabim, adirim mishperei yam. Adir v'amarom Adonai, adir v'amarom Adonai.
Mekor Chayim, source of life, we ask that you challenge us. Challenge us to approach you, to lessen ourselves, to learn the spiritual skill of tzimtzum, the skill of humility, the skill of being aware that we are not everything in this universe, that we have an end, that there is a world outside of us, that we can build community by learning the skill of approaching divinity. We are grateful to you for all of the many gifts in our lives. We are grateful to you most of all for the opportunity to worship on Shabbat. We are grateful for the blessings of community, and we say together, Amen.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.